Welcome back after our short adjournment for lunch. This afternoon, for those submitters in our public gallery, just a quick little bit of advice. You have 10 minutes to present your submission. We'll be giving you time when it's the 7-minute mark, and if you'd like to leave some time for questions afterwards, that would be fabulous. So our first submitter is Andrew Leslie from Nuku Ora, who is online, and I believe also we have AJ, the two AJs, in person. So kia ora, welcome over to the three of you.
Oh, kia ora. We'll hand over to our esteemed leader. We were going to start with an activity because we thought that would be appropriate, but we don't need to because you've just had lunch. So thank you for this session just after lunch. I'll hand over to our esteemed leader to start us off. Kia ora.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. Ina rangatira, kua mihi mai nei kia mātou I tēnei rā, tēnā koutou katoa. So yeah, I'm Andrew Leslie. I'm Chief Executive of Nuku Ora. A little bit about ourselves first. We're a charitable trust that provides leadership and support to the physio activity system throughout the region. What I mean by physio activity system, it's all the people and the organisations and the resources that help to enable physio activity to happen. And just want to acknowledge our two AJs. We're very lucky to have them. And this is as a result of Nuku Ora significantly increasing our investment into and our resourcing of our mahi in the Wairarapa. So we're very lucky to have them. And just wanted to note that we do currently do a lot of work in the Carterton area. And so we've been working with council officers in several areas of work across things like spaces and places, play, active recreation, sport for tamariki and rangatahi in particular. Andrea will touch a little bit more on that in a sec. Also want to acknowledge that we have across the last few years through our Tū Manawa Active Aotearoa Fund, which we manage on behalf of Sport New Zealand, that we've invested over $340,000 into the Carterton area to support all sorts of activities across play, active recreation and sport. Look, want to acknowledge the challenges that you face as a council. Very challenging economic times obviously for you, and you're needing to balance many things, including the water and keeping sort of levels of services going, etc. So in light of all that, we're really supportive of how you've been considering enabling physio activity and amongst all that. We've focused our feedback in our submissions on matters that do relate to or impact on the activation of the community. And yeah, my sort of final point in this introduction is really to note that it's clear we're on the same page really in terms of our strategic priorities. They're very well aligned in terms of that desire to activate the community. So Andrea, I'll pass back to you.
Kia ora, Andrea. Kia ora, Andrew. Ko waio, ko tararua te maunga, rumahanga te awa, whakaoriori te iwi, ko AJ tōku ingoa, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Just a very warm welcome. Thank you for hosting us today. My name's AJ. I'm the new partnerships manager for Nuku Ora based in the Wairarapa, and just to acknowledge Rangatane and Kahanunu as our iwi partners here. I'll hand over to the other AJ.
Kia ora koutou, ko rangi tū mau te maunga, ko roa mahanga te awa, ko ngā te kahanunu me rangitāne oku iwi, ko Antonia Thompson tōku ingoa, otherwise known as AJ. Thank you for having us here today.
So kia ora, Andrew, thank you for opening up about Nuku Ora, who we are and what we currently do. I just wanted to touch on a little bit more of my observations being at Nuku Ora since February. So just to acknowledge that there has been a bit of change with our organisation, with staff coming and going, but to acknowledge the increased investment. So we've doubled our FTE count in the Wairarapa more recently. So I'm now gone full-time. The person that I had replaced on maternity leave is coming back also. We're about to recruit in an ACC space around strength and balance for older people, and we're about to recruit for the green prescription, which is fantastic for the community. Again, like to tautoko Andrew's comments to say thank you for your contribution in terms of sport and wellbeing. The theme of my kōrero with you today is really around relationships and partnerships. We've built a really good relationship so far with Glenda's team, with Kirsty, Bex, Lisa and Megan, and we would like to continue to do that. And we see some opportunities through your long-term plan. As Andrew's already touched on, there's work that's already happening in the regional spaces and places, and that talks about our provision, whether it's for parks and open spaces or indoor sports fields, or a very topical conversation for most of our Wairarapa councils, aquatic facility provisions. So we've got work happening in that space. The regional play network, which your staff often attend to, around natural play, and attended a hui in Palmerston North around that. The active healthy learning that is run out of Carterton School with Darren and the team there. And I just really wanted to acknowledge the leadership that Carterton District Council plays in terms of those regional groups. Kirsty, Bex and Glenda's team are always there and always representing Wairarapa, and so we really appreciate that. In terms of other success for the Carterton District, as Andrew touched on, there's been some investment from Nuku, who receives funding from Sport New Zealand to help activate communities in key areas. The onboard skate program was very successful out of Carterton with great feedback, and the Kia Kinakina program also run out of Carterton. Looking at your long-term plan and the opportunities that Nuku sees to partner with you, we definitely see the continuation of those programs that we've already touched on, but we see there is also support in your Wairarapa positive ageing strategy, given that we also work in the positive ageing space also. We see that there's implementation support that we could also provide in your rangatahi strategy across the Wairarapa. We have people that lead in that space also. We think that there's an opportunity to take a sub-regional approach to aquatics. So there is a national aquatic strategy being drafted at the moment from Sport New Zealand. We believe if we could get the three councils to collaborate on what are the regional needs for aquatics for the Wairarapa. I note your comment, Ron, your noise. But again, to acknowledge Carterton really leads this way in the regional approach to things. But given the significant investment in aquatics, we think a regional approach to that is a good thing to have a conversation around. Te Manawa funding, we've already received additional information around intergenerational play for your community. We're supporting the Village project also. So really looking forward to elaborating and working on those things more as a partnership with Carterton District Council. Thank you.
Awesome, well done. Questions from the committee for either of the AJs or Andrew? Ladala.
Question. The indoor pool project. What involvement do you see that Nuku can contribute towards that? Is it more just the active recreation sport thing, or is there a funding available to help in that direction?
So through our conversations with councils, aquatics are on all three councils' radar at the moment. So we have reached out to Sport New Zealand and requested some support for the Wairarapa around aquatics facility, because it fits really nicely with that regional spaces and places piece of work. Sport New Zealand have said that they would support financially if the three councils would support financially for a regional aquatic strategy, because we've got ageing outdoor pools in the South Wairarapa area. We've got some need in the Masterton area also. They've got some need, and obviously Carterton has got a big project on the table at the moment. So we would come as funders with collaboration from the other councils through our relationship with Sport New Zealand.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, team, for the update. Really just a question just for clarity. So in terms of your submission, you're asking for more of the same, a continuation of the relationship between Nuku and CDC.
Yeah, and just that we think those opportunities could be broadened. I think we've just touched the iceberg between the joint mahi that Andrew talked about. We think there's more opportunities for us to work closer together.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, AJ's and Andrew. I just have a question around, are you in competition with Recreation Aotearoa?
Andrew, you're probably the best person, given that you were the CEO of that organisation. I'll let you answer that one.
No, we're not in competition with them. We're both, we have similarities in terms of we both are looking to build the capability of organisations that work in the sector, but we certainly complement each other rather than compete. Was there a specific example that prompted that question?
No, it's just they're presenting today as well, so I was just interested. I think they're presenting.
We're good friends. Actually, technically, we're a member of Recreation Aotearoa, so there you go. We're good friends.
Thank you.
Time.
One more question. I've reached time.
Just when you say sub-regional approach, are you talking sub-Greater Wellington regional or sub-Wairarapa regional?
I'm talking Rimatakas to Masterton. I'm talking South Wairarapa, Carterton and Masterton.
Which fits in supplementary. So if you consider, if the comment I need to take on board is that you're happy to support if all three councils support, but you're also happy to consider sub-regional within the Wairarapa, does that leave an in for Carterton to actually see support on projects, given that we're not confident that the other two councils will agree to anything?
We would be.
I could maybe answer that. So I'd say to attract the funding from Sport New Zealand, there would be an expectation that the councils would at least work together around a strategy for it. So it's that piece we're talking about at the moment is the strategy piece, and Sport New Zealand are very much about how organisations collaborate across regions.
Great. Thank you, three of you, very much for your submission and for making yourselves available to present to us this afternoon.
Thank you for your hard work, team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next submitter that I'd like to call to the table is Hank Optland, who's our submission number 131. Hank, as you look heard, if you'd like questions, Robin will let you know in 7 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Over to you.
All right, well, I'd like to thank you all for listening to submissions. It's a democracy in action. Wonderful democracy and a wonderful district. My submission is that is got a number of aspects to it, but I want to sort of start off by saying that we are in a cost of living crisis. Many people are feeling the pinch, finding it quite hard, and somewhat alarmed by the rise of rates. There's also the rise of indebtedness that is coming up. The increase of the council debt by $5.5 million for option 3. Understand that that we need to have good water systems, wastewater as well as potable water. I understand that, but we would like to see people take on board the fact that people out there are hurting financially. People who are renting can't pay more rent. The landlords are getting higher rates, and they feel they need to put the rent up. People who are mentioned in this document here about being a larger number of people, 65 and over. Many of them are heavily reliant on New Zealand super, but not a lot of extra income that they have. Some of them none at all, and finding it more and more difficult to pay for rates. So these are the sort of things I'd like to bring to the notice of the council here. The other thing is by taking on greater debt, we will have to. The council will need to be paying those debts back. So more of the rates intake will actually be then spent on debt servicing, and at least less of the dollars are available for other projects. And so, I know I'm not saying anything that's real new, but I still want to bring it to the notice of the council. The other thing is the district is expected to grow over the next 30 years. That's in the document here. in long-term plan, possibly a greater reliance could be placed on people who are developers, subdividers to be paying more towards the growth of the wastewater system. I know it has to be put in place, but possibly, there should be a targeted debt repayment of that wastewater system by people who want to put in more streets and more lots, so on. And as well as the trade waste agreements with the local businesses, possibly that could be contributing more towards it. Especially, we have to upgrade the wastewater plant to be able to deal with the trade waste, which is more difficult to deal with. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is the natural hazards. The natural hazards, in particular, the drainage. There are more and more hard surfaces with greater urban intensification. You get larger amounts of impervious surfaces. So as soon as you put 1,000 square meters of concrete down, there's 1,000 square meters where water's not draining away. So that runs off and then it overloads the system. So that's the reason why I was suggesting that possibly there should be a surcharge levied on any person who's got more than 50% of their property with impervious surfaces. And that can be done with maybe satellite imagery, and possibly if someone challenges it, you can actually visit their property. But that would be one way to be able to get better drainage systems paid for by the people who've got many hard surfaces. And that was just something I threw in there. But it is definitely a problem. As more and more urban intensification and consolidation takes place all around the world, they're all dealing with extra stormwater that needs to be channeled away. And so, as soon as you stop rain from going into the ground, it flows off and has to go through drains that the district has to supply. I already mentioned about the growing population of 65 plus, 15.09% rates increases. So very significant. People whose income has probably only gone up 4%, which is the current inflation rate. The March quarter inflation rate was 4%. It was announced fairly recently. I think this document is based on a bit more than that. Possibly that can be taken into account, at least to reduce the rate somewhat, as the inflation rate is now seen to be trending downwards. And then hopefully that the increases don't have to be as great. A little bit more about the debt increases. When I first moved to this district late last century, the Carterton Council debt was about $4 million. That's now, at the end of the long-term plan, is $53 million. It's a 13-fold increase. That's an enormous increase. And the Bible tells us, that the borrower is a servant to the lender, or if you like, a slave to the lender. But we don't want to be a situation where we're going to be a slave to the people that we're borrowing from. And a greater percentage of the rates intake will have to be spent in debt servicing. So it is and even in the long-term plan here, that we've got pretty much a doubling of debt in the next 10 years. That's to me, is alarming, something that we really need to be looking at carefully. And maybe we're really calling for financial discipline. I'm not saying that you people have already considered and turned over everything. There's evidence of that in this long-term plan. Certain things have been achieved, also certain things have been put off. So I can see that there's already been a great attempt made, but I'm really hoping for the greatest possible financial discipline.
7 minutes. 7 minutes.
7 minutes?
3 minutes left.
Okay, all right. Well, just a bit of history, I suppose. Robert Muldoon had this great think big projects, borrowed heavily, and then the government between 1999 and 2009, or 2008, I should say, spent a lot of their funds repaying that debt till we had a very small debt, and then it's been growing ever since, and that actually leads to other problems. So hopefully the council won't get in the same trap, because now the government has to take all kinds of austerity measures because of the growing debt by the Ardern and key governments before that. So we need to be very careful that we don't get caught in the trap. I'll just leave it there. I've got questions.
Thank you so much, Hank. Committee members, questions?
One question.
Thank you, Hank. You mentioned council debt prior to the millennium of 3 million. Do you know what the council rates income was at that stage offhand as well?
Sorry, I can't remember that. It was significantly less though.
Any other questions from Patty?
Just one very quick question. What do you do, Hank? You've got lots of letters. What's your current occupation?
Well, I'm a company director of a number of companies. I teach as well.
Right. Okay.
I used to teach at university, but at the moment I'm teaching at a secondary school. Yeah.
Okay. Just curious.
Yes, actually one letter was missing, but it's okay.
Thanks. Are there any other questions for Hank in relation to his submission? Thank you very much for your
Right.
time.
Thank you for listening to me.
And thank you for putting in the submission as well. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Our next submitter, we have Matt, who is joining us virtually this afternoon. Matt, as you will have heard, you'll have a total of 10 minutes. Robin will let you know when there's 7 minutes up. So if you want to allow time for questions, and Matt is submitter number 131. So over to you, Matt. You need to unmute yourself. You're on mute. Can you unmute him, Robin?
Oh.
He's on. Oh, he's on.
There we go. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. I congratulate the CDC on their theme of the submission today, resilience, because I believe that a number of people with disabilities are indeed resilient, because of course, I'm submitting on behalf of CCS Disability Action, who are the biggest pan disability service provider in New Zealand for people with disabilities. So yeah, I mean, I guess resilience starts within the communities in which we choose to live, work, and play. At the core of this, access plays a huge part in how people with disabilities and their whānau are empowered to contribute within communities such as Carterton. The ability for people with disabilities to fully contribute and participate within the community often starts with independence. So the ability to move around is crucial to not only our well-being as a community, but indeed everybody else's in general. I applaud CDC on its focus within their LTP on the proposed upgrades of footpaths and roading networks. This potentially makes journeys safer for those with disabilities and impairments. It is vital that footpaths and roading surfacing is kept in an excellent condition, and where possible, curb cuttings, inclines and recesses into gutters need to be standardised. CCS Disability Action could provide advice on how this could be achieved going forward, and would be keen to be involved in the planning process of any projects, both now and into the future. Access should be a consideration within all council policies moving forward. As with an ageing population, the age-related conditions associated require a greater provision of access needs and requirements. A major aspect of the work CCS Disability Action does is the administration of the mobility parking scheme. More and more New Zealanders are now accessing the scheme and becoming mobility parking permit holders. So CCS Disability Action would encourage councils to have to increase the provision of mobility parking, particularly around high traffic areas and or where events are held, allowing a greater levels of inclusion and participation opportunities for people with disabilities and those they socialise with, reducing the impact of isolation. Accessibility should be an ongoing rather than a set of minimal standards to be complied with. There is always room for improvement, especially now there are new and innovative approaches to access now being developed. I believe rather than councils focusing on the fiscal impact of upgrades, improving access should have a greater emphasis and should be placed on the impact of making changes that will benefit everyone. As making communities fully accessible and therefore more inclusive does not make any project or new build more expensive. So do it once and do it right.
Beck, thank you very much. Appreciate your submission. And I open it up for questions from anybody on the committee. Any questions for Matt? Thank you also for your offer on assistance with pavements and sort of accessibilities with the inclines and the ramps. It's obviously it's always better to ask those who are users than those who maybe just hold engineering degrees. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for putting your submission through to us. Oh, sorry, we now have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Look, just asking for your advice, actually, have you got any advice that you could give us around improving the access for the indoor swimming team to improve access to their swimming pool and how they might be able to gain support?
I probably should mention too that I've just been approached to be part of the Walking and Wheels Access Committee of the Carterton Council. So I'm just about to attend my first meeting for that in early June. But yeah, certainly we can provide advice, and I guess particularly looking at the planning stages of any new projects and therefore upgrades in terms of accessibility. I've been in this role for around about 3 years, so it's probably better if I refer you guys to my manager, who's Rowan Hales, who looks after the access at a more regional level, because I know that Masterton, for instance, have just put in a number of things that will help with access. One of the things, I'm not sure whether Carterton has automatic doors into the facility, but that has made quite a big difference. And they also have like a hoist for access for people with disabilities to be transferred in and out of the pool. And yeah, just
wondering if you've got funding sources.
Maybe that's a question. I mean, that's actually not really part of what we're hearing. So it's a great question, and that could be something that we could possibly make a note of for our management. Put you guys in touch with the indoor swimming pool project team. Great idea.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Matt, again, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And yeah, thank you. We're now on to our next submitter. I'm sorry that we only have 10 minutes per submission. Monique and Pat, welcome. So, Wairarapa Forest and Bird. Monique, thank you. So over to you both.
We had slides for our presentation.
Yes. Submitted 132. Matt, do you mind putting yourself back on mute? Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, ko Monique Leerschool tōku ingoa. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to our submission. We really appreciate the challenge the council currently has with all the work that urgently needs doing. Resilience, the theme of this consultation, means, however, that we also have a vision and are proactive about future opportunities. The Kaipatangata Forest Block offers such an opportunity for the Carterton community. Next slide, please. Last year, the council discussed the report on a bed survey in the Kaipatangata water supply area. The report provided evidence of significant bed activity in this area, and it suggested more bed surveys, predator control, and bed-friendly forest management. Predator control hasn't been business as usual for the council, and bed protection will need resourcing. The council is asked to include this in its planning. Our peka peka are unique taonga and need our protection. It's not only beds that would benefit from predator control, but the whole ecosystem of the forest would benefit, especially all our native biodiversity. Next slide, please. The water catchment for the Kaipatangata water supply is primarily in the neighbouring dockland. The water supply area sits in a corner of a large piece of land which the Carterton District Council owns. It's more than 300 hectares, and most of it is a commercial pine plantation with restricted public access. While money is tight, the economics of this land use need urgently reviewing, and other options need to be considered. The current land use is costing the community. After logging, it would be possible to gradually transform the pine plantation into a native forest over a period of time. With some active management, the natural regeneration would take care of most of it. Through some planning, cost-effective options for a gradual change could be identified. The Greater Wellington Regional Council has experience in changing the land use on their properties and could help with advice. Their regional parks are already accessible for multiple recreational users. New community recreation opportunities could be created in the regenerated Kaipatangata forest. And at the same time, new economic opportunities could be explored. This vision has already received some initial community support. We urge the council to include the vision of transforming the Kaipatangata forest for our native biodiversity and for our Carterton community in their long-term plan, so that preparation work can identify some pathways for a gradual change. We're happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Well, there must be some questions from Letty.
Fairy Park,
Yeah.
what's that?
Question. So, for instance, in Snow Valley, the council owns a reserve, and it used to be a private reserve. It's quite large and extensive with native trees. And down at the bottom, they invited kids of the local community to create fairy houses. And so they stuck to the trees. And so it means that there are opportunities for family events. I have attended them. And so it draws in young families, rather than, say, trampers, which is quite a different user group. So what could happen, for instance, is right at the beginning of your forest block is a block of eucalyptus trees. They could be cut. It's really accessible from the road, and in a nice small area which could be planted and used for family events.
Can you imagine that with lots of those red toadstools? Sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you for the presentation. Just an observation first and then a question. The pine trees that have been harvested up there already, and we have planted back manuka for honey. You see the rest of that area after pine forests have gone, planted back in just manuka or a variety of natives to help with the biodiversity?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, and there are different options. So part of the preparation work would look at what options have we got in the forest. Would it mean we leave some of the standing along the streams, for instance? Does it mean we increase the manuka planting? At the moment, the honey industry is not very strong at the moment. In our experience living right next door and planting lots of native trees, it's a temporary crop, so it disappears. The other trees will overgrown it. So in our experience, the regeneration is taking care of the native birds, and it will mean you need weed control in order to help that process. You could think of native timber trees. Totara is a kind of a weed which grows really easily there. It could also take into allowing timber trees to be harvested for carving, mulberry carving, for instance. So the options are quite wide.
Thank you.
So you're thinking of this as down the bottom end of the, like the bats being up top end will keep the people away.
So you're asking how bats go together with people?
Yeah, I think keep them far. It's our best kept secret, isn't it?
So bats live primarily in trees during the day, and they are active during the night to do some hunting. So normally people are there during the day. So and in Hamilton, for instance, the bats have adapted to quite a lot of urban activity. They've been seen around McDonald's in town. So they have got some adaptability, and it's not that we have to separate bats from people.
Any further questions? Thank you both so much for your submission and for your passion. And the presentation, I think Robin will email that out to all the members as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Our next submitter is Kevin Sullivan, who submitted number 81. Kevin, welcome. 10 minutes. We'll let you know when 7 minutes is up if you'd like to allow time for questions.
I'll try to be brief.
Over to you.
Right. Well, thanks for having me. It's nice to see you all in one place. Just passing in the street. I'm Kevin Sullivan. I'm an urban ratepayer. And as an urban ratepayer, I expect the council to provide three things for me for the rates that I pay: water services, refuse collection and disposal, and roading. These are the basics that I expect. Anything else is a nice to have. To me, they are the foundations of a healthy and active community. If we don't have them, what do we do? So my submissions are about the two options that we were asked to provide feedback on. To me, a reliable, safe roading system is vital for the success and productivity of our rural sector in particular. The majority of the wealth generated in our area is from the agricultural sector, and so forestry. And so when I read in the risks associated with option 2, that we weren't going to be dealing with dangerous intersections and known accident sites. We would have continuing decline of our roading system, which I suggest is our most valuable asset as a community. And that communities would possibly become isolated. I don't think that's acceptable. If I was a rural ratepayer and I read that, I'd wonder what I was paying rates for, because really roading is the fundamental thing that they're getting when they pay rates. So I think that we need to go, I'd recommend that we adopt option 1. The difference in the operational spend between option 1 and option 2 is 3%, by my calculation, of the total operating budget of the council. And I would suggest that the council look deeply and find that 3% within savings in other areas if you're worried about increasing rates, because I'm sure you could. When it comes to wastewater, if we don't deal with our wastewater effectively, the environment suffers. You only have to look around at our waterways to see the effects of pollution. So we've got to ensure that our wastewater treatment is absolutely sound. The consultation document states that the primary treatment stage is at the end of its life and needs replacement, and that the council intends to replace the primary sedimentation tank. But the preferred option for that, implementation, is not to replace it, but to upgrade it. And the stated risks include the potential need to replace the tank within 2 to 5 years, which sort of suggests to me that the upgrade's potentially ineffective. So I think that we should go for option 1 and the water treatment as well. The difference, the effect on the rates is something like $250,000 a year over 10 years. That's not a lot of money to be able to find again through savings. So really, in conclusion, I just say that in hard times, I think the council should concentrate on the fundamentals and prioritise our assets. We can't allow our assets to deteriorate. If we do that, it's just going to come back to bite us later on. It'll be much more expensive and difficult to remediate them down the track if we allow the maintenance and upgrades to lapse now. That's really all I've got to say.
Thank you very much. Succinctly put. Very great. Deputy Mayor, then the Mayor, and possibly some others.
Thanks, Kevin. You mentioned a couple of times about funding the upper level of wastewater and roading being funded from savings. Did you, in looking through the LTP and with your knowledge, any ideas where these savings might be best accrued from?
Well, so one of the difficulties for me there is when I look through the document, there are sort of sectors, but no detail. So, for example, where is it? Over here. There's $6 million on community services. I know we've got a library, and I know we've got the entertainment centre, but I don't know what that $6 million goes on apart from them. So it's difficult for me and others I've spoken to identify exactly what those savings might be in detail, because we don't know what a lot of the money's spent on.
Thank you.
Question?
Okay, thanks.
Hi.
So tell the committee what your background is.
I'm a mechanical engineer. I had a career in design and development of manufactured products. was with the DSIR for a while, and I also built boats on the banks of the Nile, if anyone's interested in going back that far. But the majority of it was spent with a company called, firstly, Interlock Industries in Wellington, and then Assa Abloy, which is a Swedish multinational. And my final role was director, or the title was Director of Innovation for Assa Abloy Australia. So I've had a background in design project.
Any other questions from anyone on the committee in relation to the submission that we have just heard? Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to put your submission in. Great to hear from you and words of experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next to the table, I would like to welcome Cheryl Watson from Wellington Free Ambulance.
Good. Good, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to hear from me today on behalf of Wellington Free Ambulance. As part of the long-term plan for Carterton District Council, we are actually asking consideration to a new model of funding that's been historically provided by Carterton District Council in support of Wellington Free Ambulance, in which they have contributed a grant of $3,000 per year on a 3-year multi-year basis plan. That plan and cost has been in place now for a number of years and is not necessarily taken into consideration the Carterton District Council growth across our population that we're serving. So we have put together a proposal where we would like your funding with the council for further 3 years. And instead of having a fixed annual grant amount, we would like to propose like a variable funding figure where over those 3 years it is based on your population at a figure of $1 per person. Just to give some background about Wellington Free Ambulance, obviously we were founded back in 1927 by Mayor Charles Norwood at the time, and his philosophy was for the ambulance service to be free to his community, and we've carried that philosophy throughout our existence and across the Wairarapa when we came here just over 12 years ago. The idea is that we don't want to see anybody in the community unable to access an ambulance emergency service based on their needs and financial constraints. So, as we all know, the Wairarapa community is continuing to grow, and we're servicing now quite a significant number of the community. There is a slide that provides a Carterton dashboard. I don't know if that's available. Next one, last one. That one there. I'm sure that this can be studied in more detail, but this sets out basically a breakdown of the calls that we're attending for the Carterton district specific, both on the types of jobs that we're attending, the kilometres that we're having to travel, the breakdown of the age groups of our Carterton residents, and the jobs that we're attending with unlikely threat to life, no threat to life, and potential threat to life. And you can see that well, you probably can't see from that, but at the bottom there, we're transporting about 62% of our community from Carterton up to the emergency department, with the remainder being non-transport. And people will often ask, well, why do we not transport? There's a couple of reasons for that. It may not be emergency and we may make a referral to their local GP. But also we've introduced a new model of care within the ambulance service, which is our extended care paramedics. And with an additional year's training that these paramedics undergo to get a postgraduate degree, they're qualified to do additional skills such as suturing wounds, administering antibiotics, commencing medical treatment, and then doing referral through to the GP or follow-up with the patient over a 48-hour period. And that allows any person who doesn't need to go up to ED the opportunity to stay in their warm, healthy home, hopefully, and start that healing process. So the model of care is slightly changing across the emergency ambulance service, but you can see that we're still attending a large number of jobs across the Carterton district. And the other thing that we also offer within this district, obviously, is our rescue squad, which has a specialised members of the team trained in rescue operations, as well as a full-time rescue vehicle here. We also are the flight paramedics on our regional rescue helicopter through Wellington Free Ambulance. And there's myself out in the community now, regularly training people in CPR and how to use AEDs. So with all that in mind, obviously, we are very concerned about that population growth, because that just leads to more calls. And so a model where we could have a variable grant each year based on your $1 per person per your population, we feel would be really advantageous to your community and to us, to allow us to stay free. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I have one quick question. Are you seeing an increase across the Wairarapa and the region, I guess, with the declining number of doctors in the areas? Are you seeing more call outs?
Sure.
To the ambulance?
We absolutely are. We're being used. Initially, I think the calls were trending upward because they saw us as a way to take them to ED through the back door. But that model of care, and with working with all our medical facilities, we're trying to see and treat and leave at home if we can, to keep them away from ED, or refer them through to GPs. But yeah, we're absolutely seeing that increase with the limitations of people being able to get GP appointments in a timely manner.
Cheryl, just one question of clarification. I think I misread it. You said you're attending 62% of the population that per year. Is that your Wairarapa population?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Councillor Lawrence.
Just around the numbers, Cheryl, you said it costs $350,000 to run the two stations in Masterton and Greytown. And then you've said it's $667,000 to operate the service in the Carterton district. Presumably that they're measuring different things.
Where are you referring to, sorry?
The need for funding. What page it is.
That's 64. Oh,
my goodness, pages here. So the bottom of page 60 refers to the 667,000 in CDC, the last paragraph. And that's to run the service, and just the total in brackets there. Is that what you're referring to, Councillor?
Yeah, I am. Well, I'm just comparing that with a number of 350,000 to run the two ambulance stations. So that, presumably, is that saying that running the ambulance stations is only a fraction of the actual overall cost of the?
Yeah, so that would be your operational costs of keeping the stations going and everything that's within them. But the actual, then you add what it costs to run the service to visit each patient, and that goes up.
Yeah, so it says 667 required to operate the service in Carterton district.
So, but you receive funding from DHB?
No.
So
So we get about 80, just over 80% from government, and then the rest is shortfall. Our funding from the DHB or Te Whati Ora comes through via the patient transfer service. So when we run a patient transfer service, which is contract funded, and that's our order and service provided for inter-hospital.
The funding from government as well?
Just over 80%.
Yeah, how much is that?
Well, we run a shortfall of about 9 million a year. So I'm not sure.
80%.
Yeah, put that backwards.
9 million is 20%.
Government. Yeah.
And how much do you get from the community generally? Can't talk across the Wairarapa?
Well, so traditionally the 9 million shortfall, I mean, when I started 10 years ago, it was about a $7 million shortfall. So we've been very fortunate throughout the Wairarapa Wellington region to get that money. This last 12, 18 months, you'll know that we've got the purpose-built station focus for the Wairarapa. So that was an additional 7.5 million with a requirement to raise 3.5 million within the Wairarapa community. And we're very, very close. So all funds that are donated in the Wairarapa are staying in the Wairarapa now and ongoing. And that's because we want all of the funds from the community that are donated to stay towards operational costs within the Wairarapa.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Hi.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
We're very, very lucky to have the Wellington ambulance service here. Welcome back to the table. Jason, this is submission number 117.
Thank you. I don't presume you'll be looking forward to hearing from me again. It's a grueling day that I see you've got. So thank you for the opportunity to come back in a personal capacity. I do have to, I guess, talk on a personal note about the pool. So I've given up running and I never thought I would swim at our pool. You just have to look at it to question your reason to swim there. But I think it's illustrative because eventually I gave in and gave it a go. And because I was used to a nice pool, it's pleasant and clean and, you know, welcoming. And then I discovered that it does the job. And now I don't notice it. I guess what it seems to me is, I mean, I've noticed this moving to Carterton is we can adapt, and maybe that's a resilience thing. And at the risk of presuming to know what it's like to be a farmer living at the end of a road and relying on the state of a road or the person living next to the sewage treatment plant, we're used to a level of service. But all I see, I mean, my job is strategic planning. I'm an engineer, so all I see in the long-term plan is things are going to get very difficult. So what are the hard decisions that we need to make? So I feel like levels of service are part of the question. So that's my personal experience through swimming at the pool. The rates affordability, thank you for the reading pack of all the submissions because it helped me see how this issue has come up. So obviously not obviously, but mathematically, the sooner you lower rates, the less the long-term effect because of the compounding effect of doing something more expensive now. There's compounding for every year after that. So that would be good if we can. And in my own 20-year plans or 10-year plans for the Defence Force, I do this myself. When I get out to beyond 3 years, I just say it returns back to the nominal rate, which is what we see in the long-term plan, rates going back to 3%. But really, is that what's going to happen? So it really does matter about the first year and then less so the second year and the third year. So I think the focus would be best on that first year, bring it down as much as possible. I've said in my submission, I'm quite used to having no footpaths. I live on the lower end of Brooklyn Road by the railway line. And I do get it that it's a road safety issue. It's not good for people who use wheelchairs or walking sticks, but it's semi-rural in aesthetic. But I don't speak for everyone who doesn't have a footpath. I didn't see any mention of mitigating stormwater infiltration into the sewage system. So at our end of Brooklyn Road, when there's heavy downpours, we get overflows of the sewage system in two places. So that can be addressed by stopping stormwater getting into the sewage system, but I didn't see any mention of that. And if that in turn means less stress on the wastewater treatment plant, then I think that's worth taking into account and maybe reprioritising. But I mean, I accept I didn't seek further information from council about that. So that may already have been considered. Obviously, the issue of amalgamation or even shared services is like the elephant in the room. We're one of the smallest councils with the highest rates, so something's going on there. So I think it's adding weight to how can we do things more efficiently. I noticed that one of the consultation options didn't have a status quo possibility to tick the box. And it presumed that the business case was unquestionable. And I would suggest that if you're going to put a consultation option, that I guess what I'm trying to say is that it shouldn't be taken at face value, that it's either do it or nothing else. So, yeah. And I guess while I'm making suggestions about consultation options, having two options is what I've got used to in the long-term plan, but I'd love to see more options so we can engage in more discussion and rather than guess what's the detail behind the long-term plan. I know that means more work. And it's not an easy solution for me to just say, we'll have a citizen panel, retired engineers or whatnot, because they'll all have different opinions and then you're herding cats. I know all the challenges, but I think it's worth exploring for next time. And I think it's quite an impressive package of submissions. So when I was reading through, I noted the quality of the comments and the engagement. So I think it's come out quite well. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Jason, very much. Good to see you here again this afternoon.
Thanks for putting up with me.
What you said earlier. Committee members, do we have any questions for Jason on his afternoon? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And next, I'd like to welcome to the table Ron Shaw. Welcome, Ron.
Worship, Madam Chair, councillors, thank you for letting me speak to my brief submission. I'm not going to read it, be wasting your time, so I'll just skip over the high points. So resilience is a good theme for Carterton, so it's an appropriate reorientation of the approach. The achievements set out on the consultation document were individually gratifying, but some of them are not about resilience. So the decision making around resilience will get a bit harder. In terms of the pages 6 and 7 of the LTP consultation document, most of them are what we call motherhood statements. You just can't disagree with them. But there are some that are open to dispute. So we've got NIWA wedded to a thing called RCP 8.5. So NIWA keeps saying that the world is ending and we're going to be killed by climate change. That is not the case. Even the IPCC, which is the scientific body on these things, doesn't say that. Alternate power sources. Beware of photovoltaic power. It will never displace fossil fuels. 80% of primary energy is from fossil fuels, and PV is not going to make a difference. You can use it for powering remote devices. There's certain applications where it's fine, but and it's really a message for the officers to make sure they make the appropriate selections. And the other thing is electric vehicles. Now, the market for electric vehicles is collapsing around the world. Some manufacturers have stopped any electric development, gone back to internal combustion engines, which can be made very, very much more efficient than the current ones we have. So be careful when the officers come to you and ask for another electric vehicle. It may not be the right choice. And the flooding at Flat Point, it's not caused by climate change. Once again, the IPCC tells us so. Council needs to be careful of not taking on costs that are properly sheeted home somewhere else. On the consultation items themselves, I agree with option 2 in both cases. Reason being, they represent a good way forward without over-committing on both those areas. We haven't seen yet what the 3 will be for Carterton, so we just wastewater and the other stuff ticking over. On non-consultation items, Jason mentioned that maybe we should have had a few more than 2. So these are the ones that were listed in the document, but not asked for consultation. Now, I think development of the land for expansion of wastewater and the new land on Dalton Farm should be paused until the shape of the local would have done well proposals are clear, because we could be preempting things that we don't want to. Pedestrian access, yeah, I agree with that, as long as they can be done more cost effectively than a raised crossing by Wellington Council. High risk even will remain the same thing. As long as there's a risk assessment to back up the work, they should go ahead. Alternative transport trails. Now, regrettably, other councils are closing down their commitment to this, and I think that leaves Carterton with no alternative but to do the same. Catch management, desludging, yeah, do the work, should have been done and should be scheduled as a regular maintenance item. Merger of the 3 councils. But it's unfortunate that our mayor was unable to spark the cooperation required to readdress the merger. Doesn't mean I accept the need for amalgamation. As you know, I stood against it when it was put in front of us last time. But the coalition government has hinted at a preference for big is better, and it would have been prudent to have had marshalled the updated facts on the ground. So because we haven't taken it forward, when central government comes a knocking, we don't really have much to talk to them about. And Chris Bishop has shown a desire to impose solutions. On the others, pausing and rescoping of the following work: the office block, movement of the operations to Dalefield, the Holloway car park, laneways, dog pound. Great work on the dog pound. All kudos to the officers, and also the council's commitment to employing local qualified staff. So there was a thing called Sandy Springs, a US town that set up with an all contractor council. They had 1 employee and everything was contract. They now have permanent staff. So they've also shown that it's cheaper to do it in-house than it is to contract it out. Although, of course, we do need to seek appropriate input when it's a specialist area. So, and we're not talking about stopping all contract. Rates affordability. Now, you have 2 lots of people coming to the table, those looking for money and those looking to not spend it. And I thank you for your commitment to keeping rates low in the out years, but as Jason points out, that is likely to be taken over by events. But to keep it low, you're going to have to gatekeep community originated proposals to spend rates money on nice to haves. We see from what's happened in Wellington what a focus on nice to haves can do to a city.
Right, 7 minutes, Ron.
Thank you. An example of where the council is trying to fill this role, acknowledge the Deputy Mayor on this, that someone proposed a statue for Georgina Byer. I reckon it's a great idea. It would be just like the Riff Raff statue in Hamilton. People would come to have their photos taken in front of it. And the Deputy Mayor pointed out to the members of the public that got a bit upset that it was rates neutral. Those sort of things, that's where the council can fill a role, that you can consolidate ideas, move them forward, but where the rates is not used for funding. So when the pool people come looking for more money, as I believe the time they will, council needs to be careful about that. And that's my submission.
Ron, appreciate your time. I think we've got about 1 minute for questions. So if any committee members have any questions for Ron? Thank you very much.
Appreciate one question summary. It seemed to me from the tone of your submission that you're not as disappointed in the current council as you have been in the past.
That would be correct.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome to the table our submission number 124, Sky Halford. Hi, 7 minutes, allowing 3 for questions, or the full 10 minutes and no question. Over to you.
Kia ora everyone. I think most people here know me. And thank you for the space to present my views on the LTP. I'd like to acknowledge for everyone listening that I'm a CDC staff member, and so therefore my submission today is purely on my views as a resident here in Carterton as well. And so I won't reflect on my role or within my direct team. And so currently me and my partner pay $3,900 for the CDC component of our rates, and with the preferred option going up 15.6%, this results in about $4,500 per year, meaning that total rates that we would pay is $86.54 a week, $12.34 a day, or $6.17 per person per day for a 2-person household, as we have. $6.17 per day is cheaper than my large decaf cappuccino that I like to order from Wild Oats. It's cheaper than a block of Whittaker's chocolate nowadays. I tried to think of a few more examples, but there's actually not a lot you can buy anymore for less than $6.17. However, for that price from the council, I'm able to access clean drinking water at home, work, and any food or drinking establishment I go to, clean water to shower in and deal with the after effects of eating and drinking, all that stuff I bought. Footpaths that I can walk to and from work every day in my loop that I do down Lincoln Road and whatnot. Roads that I can drive to the supermarket or to Mount Holdsworth or to wherever I need to go. Sparks Park, now that I've become my mother's default dog sitter, and being able to tire him out. Being able to get the latest non-fiction book to sit on my nightstand while I think about reading it, that I can access from anywhere in the Greater Wellington region, delivered straight to Carterton. Recycling, bins and collection, which after living in Upper Hutt for 6 months, I didn't realise was a thing that all councils actually did. And as well as all the services we've been able to access through the home ownership sort of process. So LIM reports, building consent information, all that sort of thing. All of these services to me are worth more than $6.17 per day. And I recognise the value in these services and the ones that I maybe don't use, but other people also value. In my submission, I selected option 1 for both of the consultation items, which would see investment above what the council has selected as their preferred option. We often hear the phrase historical underinvestment when talking about council assets. However, I feel that the preferred options would exacerbate that historical underinvestment thing that we keep talking about, with risks to roading such as our roading assets may be compromised and certain communities may become isolated. Likewise, within the wastewater treatment plant, the increasing risk of foul odour smells. And as someone who walks home or walks around Carterton quite a lot, my partner who works from home 3 to 4 days a week, these are things that impact on our ability to enjoy our space. When I convinced my partner to move here from Christchurch, I sold it to him as this is a place to have your barbecuing dreams, because he really wanted to get into barbecuing. And I was like, it's a perfect place to sit in the sun on the deck, have friends and family, barbecue going, and a few too many beers on a Sunday afternoon. And what wasn't in my pitch to him at the time was that potentially it'd come with a side of wastewater treatment plant odour. And so therefore, those barbecue dreams are worth more to me than $6.17 per day. And that's my submission.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's definitely food for thought. And I hope he doesn't regret the move from down south. Open to committee members for any questions on Sky's personal submission on behalf of her and her partner.
One thing I have to say, congratulations for moving to Carterton. And it's great to hear some positive things that have come through from your presentation rather than the other presentations we've had today concerning our rates increases. So thank you for that. And it's really good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Tommy, have you presented on a long-term plan anywhere else in the country before? Have you paid rates and lived in Christchurch?
No,
Did you
no.
present on long-term? So what prompted you to present to this one?
Obviously, when you work for the council, you get to understand maybe a bit more all of the services that is provided to you as a resident. So yeah, this is the first home we've bought. So we bought it in August last year. And I suppose we always heard from parents, oh, rates are so expensive. And to us, I know, acknowledging that we're a double income household with no kids, but we also try to, make like that work, I suppose. Like we purposely bought under the cap of our mortgage possibilities, or so it's around, I suppose, the choices that we've chosen to make as well, that a $600 rates increase isn't a concern for us. And what's more of a concern is having a good place to live in, where services are at their best possible standards without obviously overcapitalising.
Definitely not for.
Yeah, sorry, sorry, no questions from the public floor.
You mentioned about your the Carterton District Council rates component of your rates bill. Obviously, the other piece is the regional council. Have you done a similar price comparison? You said $6.17 a day per person in your house for the services you get. I'm just curious, have you done a similar comparison to the regional council proportion?
No, I haven't. So our total rates bill currently is around $4,000. So it's about $200 or whatever for the Greater Wellington component. I'm not that great at maths off the top of my head, so I don't know what that equates to.
That's right.
Per person per day, but.
And from me, and I guess it's a little bit of a follow-up on, Ron asking if you had made submissions before. So you've answered that by saying you weren't a homeowner or a ratepayer prior. So I guess making a submission wasn't relevant to you previously, whether or not you do work for council. Having bought in Carterton last year, and I know everyone keeps saying that how high our rates are, you guys obviously did your homework on rates, how much the rates were, how much your mortgage repayments would be, and therefore positioned your investment into your home accordingly. So you did all the research on what the rates were, knowing that we are amongst the highest in the country.
Yeah, well, like from the mortgage standpoint, we bought at a time where mortgage rates are 7%. So we knew that, we didn't have that 2% mortgage rate that other families are potentially in. And yeah, we were able to access information online for Marsden, Carterton, wherever we were looking, that shows how much rates we were going to pay. So we knew all that information prior to buying.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anyone on the committee? Guy, thank you so much for presenting this afternoon. And we have one more submission. Hey, look at this. We're back on track. Yes. Tony. Submission number 28. Welcome to the table. You have 10 minutes total. Robin will let you know when there's 7 minutes.
Very good.
Questions.
Look, thank you, Mayor and councillors and other attendees. Thanks for the opportunity to present and for me, this is the first time I've formally presented to a council, so I look forward to it. My experience, recently retired, or relatively recently retired as a project manager in the infrastructure area. I was an independent project manager in the infrastructure area on large infrastructure projects. So that's my field, or was my field of expertise. I'm going to keep it fairly simple today. There is one on the consultation list that I'm obviously covering, but also a non-consultation matter very briefly as well. My preference and justification for transportation option 1. Transportation is a significant annual spend. I think it's fairly clear to everybody for the Carterton District Council, and a key and a core deliverable for Carterton. So with that, I think back to the previous submitter mentioned about some of the rates components, or the cost of rates over here, and of course it's no surprise to everybody that 450 kilometres of roading have to be looked after, of which I believe about 2/3 is sealed and a third is unsealed. The long-term plan mentions that there's an underinvestment in roading, and I guess with the two options that were put up, option I'm actually proposing we actually spend a little the larger amount. I felt that the smaller maintenance budget could delay or may, I guess, postpone essential work and then cause or necessitate emergency repairs resulting in unplanned costs, which I think the council would probably prefer not do. So I guess the issue really around that is it's never going to be cheaper, as another submitter said, to do it now or carry out some of that deferred work rather than putting it off for an indefinite period. As a project manager, I guess I'm very sort of on one of the areas I focused on was some sort of road, I'll call it a road maintenance management plan. So something that was a plan that was held and maintained by the council, which was updated, obviously clear, and it would tie into job requests from the public, various other traffic management activity, ongoing road inspection, fault reporting, etc. So the idea was there was quite a structured plan that the council should operate to maintain such a very distributed and significant asset. So I felt that was something that you may already have, but there may be room for improvement and some refining of. I think, Ron, you mentioned a while ago in the brief conversation we had a few weeks back about the roading database, which I thought sort of just struck a bit of a chord with me, and felt that was from a maintenance management point of view, a database would be a very good thing, given, again, the scale of the asset that's being looked after. And by that, I don't mean something that's actually particularly sophisticated, but it is fit for purpose to maintain something you can update relatively easily within the council. I'm also suggesting, I think, that perhaps there should be a little, and clearly I don't know what technology is used, but possibly using a little more remote monitoring technology for the roading, potentially. Could be things like, now there's things like IoT, Internet of Things, where it allows you to have these relatively inexpensive appliances which allow you to monitor something like river flow, stream flow, land movement, types of things like that. Now, I don't know what the council does in that area already. So those are sort of things. Now, obviously, you'd need you need perhaps the greater budget figure to do that, because there would be some cost involved. Nothing comes for free, even if it's relatively inexpensive. So my reason for not favouring option 2, there was a mention there about the possibility of impassable roads, which I felt rather nervous about for people that might be on the other end of an impassable road, and also what that effect would have on emergency service coverage, etc., interruption of business activity for Carterton. And of course, I guess the issue is, how would you decide what piece of road should or should not be reinstated should it fail? And you might have a word with, obviously, with the South Wairarapa District Council on that particular one, but I think it's caused them a lot of angst over the issue you're all aware of. For that one, I suppose what I guess in conclusion about what I've just said is that I'd like to see a realistic spend on the roading network, taking into consideration, obviously, climate events of recent times and no doubt the possibility of that being happening again, and also the need or desire and need for resilience. And I think also it might be quite useful to define what a usable road looks like. Is it a service that you can drive a Suzuki Swift down, or does it require you to have a four-wheel drive down the road? So I've obviously some idea about what a usable road might be and how you would contain cost possibly by using temporary roads, how you might use temporary road services, the whole idea about what a usable road looks like. I also, as I mentioned again, I think having some kind of tools to manage such a big asset and that's relatively sophisticated but not completely over the top, I think is would be a positive thing for the council to maintain and to avoid unplanned costs, basically, of the roading system.
7 minutes.
Very quickly to conclude, I would like the council to consider the formation. I've called them an independent ratepayers interest group, and what I've defined them as is a group of subject matter experts who might provide feedback to the council on selected projects or council activities. If this is allowable under the local government legislation, I wasn't clear about. I tried to look that up, but some of you may be more expert on that area. And this is not a consultancy group. It's clearly a group that might talk to the council, say that's a good idea, that's not a good idea, from their experience in the industry. So that could be something to be considered. I felt that was a better option than possibly what I'd call a ratepayers watchdog group, who might be a little more likely to be commenting after the fact. And I think that's something that's it's got its place, but I felt that an interest group, and some previous presenter talked about a citizens group, and I guess a citizen advice group or whatever it was, and whatever you'd like to call it. But it's a group of people who probably are going to be retired, are going to come along and help provide a bit of guidance or guidance rather than advice, I guess, drawing a distinction between the two, and that could be of use to the council as an ongoing idea. That's for me.
Thank you very much, Tony. Appreciate that. I have a question around the formation of an independent advisory group, interest group, that you've suggested maybe council look at having set up. So whose cost would that be at to actually set it up so it is a proper functioning group? And then who would coordinate? Who do you see would coordinate that?
That's an interesting one. Yes, obviously it would be provided. I think this, if you like, information, advice, guidance, if you like, would obviously be provided free by the people who provided it. But it isn't that, I must admit, I probably have to take your advice on, because I'm not even sure whether you're allowed to do it. But I think there would be some cost in setting it up. And although the previous person mentioned something about herding cats to do it, I think there would be a cost to the council, I think, to actually pull that group together, have a list of people and say, Fred, John, Sarah and Elizabeth might be useful for this particular one, someone else might be useful for that. So it would require coordination by the council. Yeah, and that would come at some cost.
The cost to council.
Yeah, that would be a cost to council to coordinate it. Yes, I think that would be the case.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ron?
Yeah, aware that we set up a working group for the rail crossings, and
Sorry.
And we pulled the advice from the community.
Yes, yes.
Doesn't cost us anything.
That's right. It's just an extension of that, really. It's just that, there's a lot of people within Carterton and have got skills that could be harnessed. It's as simple as that, really.
It was very
Successful, yeah. I mean, there's lots of engineers, project managers and lots of other people that could help, yeah.
On following on from that, do you feel that actually if there were enough interested people with the necessary experience that they could actually themselves sort of form that group? And I'm kind of a little bit of me thinking about Grant's submission earlier about the town centre. He's coordinating a group and then coming to council with ideas and advice. Do you think?
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, I think that could work. Yeah, no, I think there's probably a few ways of covering that one for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from any committee members? Thank you for your time and thank you for submitting.
Thank you, Councillor.
And
sorry.
With that,
Tony.
With that, we will adjourn for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good.